Hi there, I'm the Reverend Danny Crosby, a Unitarian minister serving congregations in Altrincham and in Urmston in the northwest of England. And I offer this devotion as a balm for the heart, for the mind, for the spirit, and for the soul. And it's titled, Speaking the Language of the Heart, Listening with the Ears of Your Heart. Someone said to me recently, I can't always tell when you are joking and when you're being serious. I was kind of half pleased about this. The truth is that sometimes I am at my most serious when I'm joking, or at least half joking anyway. There is a place for humour even in the most serious of situations. Sometimes absurdity helps you get through, you know. After all, there is a time for everything under the sun, even the most absurd. Now, it's strange, it may sound strange, I don't know. People often call to ask me advice about things. I'm not sure why they do, as I am loath to give advice of any kind, really. I will listen and I will share my experience, but I don't like to tell another person what they should and shouldn't do. How would I know in any case? The times that I do when I am very direct with someone are very few and far between, and they're usually in what you might call an emergency moment when really something has to be said. Again, there is a time and a place for everything under the sun. So while it might not be something I'd like to do, sometimes you must do. You have to say something. Time for everything. I have learned that often in life, all that people really need is someone to share things with, someone who will listen, someone who will empathize, not someone who will solve their problems for them. I'm usually quite good at that, although sometimes I'm not as well. I do have my limits, and I noticed I drifted away while listening to someone the other day. But the truth was that I was utterly exhausted. I'd been holding a rather challenging memorial service which had just come to an end, and someone was sharing with me some things afterwards, and I just drifted off. I have my limits. There are other times when I get distracted by the events of my life too. Sometimes, of course, the distractions can be helpful in a difficult situation. It happened on Monday, actually. I was out in the park with Molly. She was having a whale of a time playing with other dogs. You know, she's become a bit of a ball thief. She's not really interested in the ball. It's just she's learned that if she grabs the ball and runs off with it, the other dog will chase after her, which is a game she loves. She loves being chased and she loves to wrestle with other dogs. While she was playing, my phone rang. It was a friend whose mum has been seriously ill and has been in hospital. She had some concerns about her mum as well as other family issues, and she needed to talk. I listened, I offered encouragement, I offered empathy. And then suddenly I found myself distracted by the dog that Molly was playing with, he was getting a little overexcited and, shall we say, somewhat amorous. I think that might be a nice way of putting it, shall we say. Thankfully, he's not fully intact, shall we say. You know what I mean by that. The dog owner did nothing as she was engaged in an exercise class with a group of other women. I'd met this group of women before, and this woman, and her cockapoo, she told me, likes to dominate other dogs. It's not really a amorous thing, a sexual thing, if you like. He just likes to dominate. So I spent the next 20 minutes trying to be there for my friend, listen to my friend, whilst also having to constantly pull this male cockapoo off Molly. Only as soon as I did, for Molly to run back and continue wrestling with him. It was a right scene, as you can imagine. I kept apologising to my friend, but she didn't seem to mind. In fact, if truth be told, I think it actually helped her. She certainly said so. The levity and the absurdity of the situation lifted her a little out of her concerns. She was calling for advice, or she wasn't really calling for advice or someone to solve her problems. Not at all. She wasn't ringing for that reason. She just needed to talk to a trusted friend. She needed someone to listen. despite the other person's problems, someone to bear witness to what she was perhaps the challenge in her life. Not someone to fix or solve her problems, someone to listen, someone to be present to her. And thankfully, as the week has gone on, her mum is improving and her anxiety levels are much better. I do spend much of my time listening to others. Actually, I spend much of my time listening to life in all its mystery. It's a big part of my role as a minister, I think. Most of the worship I create comes from listening on every level, really, and then making some kind of sense of what I hear and what I bear witness to. This address is an example, as you can see. This devotion that's come from this address, anyway. Now, while I do listen to life in oh so many ways, I do enjoy listening to words spoken from human lips. Words are powerful things. They touch deep places within us. And yet, all that words are, when reduced to their merely physical components, are just vibrating air, aren't they? This is true, and yet it isn't true, is it at all? Words are so much more than their physical components. They connect people to deep, deep places in each other's being. They are imitations of the divine, I suspect. They are like seeds in so many ways. They begin to bring salvation, or they can begin to create destruction. And yet, when reduced to their physical components, they're just noises that come from air that vibrates. But they're more than that, of course they are. I love listening to people when they speak from their heart. I love listening to people when they speak what they must speak. I have particularly enjoyed listening to the many and varied people who have attended the many groups that I lead at the congregations I serve. I'm fascinated by what comes from those in attendance. I just love listening to folk as they try to articulate their varied understandings of life and their personal spirituality as they share them with each other. It's the same in other groups that I attend, actually, outside of my work, as folk so often try to articulate their experiences. I love to hear the language of the heart, and I love to listen with the ears of my heart. To me, it's a divine activity, for it's love coming to life in the air that's up, that we live and breathe in. Being listened to and being accepted and understood is so vital to people. I have noticed this particularly in the grief group that I hosting it this weekend. Whenever a new person attends, the one common feature that everyone talks about is this sense of loneliness after they lose a loved one. How they feel unheard by others at times, like their words are not being accepted or that others are tired of listening to them. And the beauty of the group is that each can come and speak freely and that they're accepted and not rejected. I've witnessed some moments of deep connection within the grief group, colours of grief, our shared experience of love and of loss. I've seen love incarnated through the air, through the words as we've shared together. It's a beautiful blessing. So beautiful. There is something truly beautiful in speaking words heart to heart. The language of the heart is not really about the correct use of words, but a way of being with each other. It's an intention, if you like. It's an invitation. It's about allowing others to be who they are in your space. This is true openness, by the way. Openness is not about telling another all about yourself, being open, if you like, in that sense. Openness is really about inviting the other to be themselves in your space. Openness is about invitation. It's not about pouring yourself all over another, dominating almost, like that dog in the park. It's about allowing the other to be who they are in your space. It's invitation. That's how to live truly openly, to invite the other to be who they are with you. Words connect us in some very special ways. They can be incredibly powerful. They can begin to bring deep healing, or they can be deeply destructive. What matters is the intention behind the words we speak. What seems to matter is the condition of our heart and our soul as we speak what we must speak. Words are powerful. They can be either destructive or they can be creative. Perhaps an example of the creative power of word, or the word if you like, to use religious language, is there right at the beginning of John's Gospel, in the following lines. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God. All things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. Sounds strange language, but according to John, the spoken word can literally create life, in fact, all life. Now, of course, in the original Greek, which these opening words were written in, the word for word was logos, which roughly translated actually does not mean merely a word that is spoken, but it does mean speech itself, or principle, or ultimate meaning, or thought itself. It's more than just vibrating air. In Greek philosophy, logos is also referred to as divine reason, or perhaps even the mind of God. So it's more than just vibrating air. It could mean God speaking life into being, linking it actually, these words, to the first verses from the first book of Genesis, first chapter of Genesis, when God is said to have breathed life into being, the word coming, incarnating really, in all life, remembering always that this creation was seen as good, a beautiful, good thing. So word means here, at least anyway, in my view, that life is the meaning coming into being, and perhaps Jesus can be the example of this in human form, but an example that we, all humans, can aspire to, for we're made from the same stuff. For we, each of us, can incarnate love. We can all be a part, we are a part of that divine creation, that word coming to life, really. For we are an expression of words, if you like, are an expression of our meaning as human beings, where we're creating something through our words, or we're destroying something, the opposite, I guess. But equally, we can do this when we truly listen to another through our hearts. We do this in this loving invitation, in sharing ourselves with others and inviting them to speak their loving truth to us. I don't think there's anything could be said to be more divine than this. This is divine activity in our lives. And in that space between the listening and the speaking, in that invitational space, I believe this is the true kingdom of God, here and now, in that simple space between two people, between two souls, speaking the language of the heart and listening with the ears of our hearts. There's no more greater divine activity, I would say. For when we speak, we're not merely flapping our lips, vibrating. It's not just air that's vibrating. This is divine activity. We are creating or we're destroying life through the words coming from our mouths, or the words coming into our ears. If we listen, if we speak the language of the heart, and if we listen with the ears of our hearts, in that space, that kingdom of love is alive here and now. We create it in that space between us. Simple and beautiful, isn't it? We're all a part of it, you know. There is no greater gift that you can give another person than your time and your loving presence. When we do, we are truly engaged in divine activity. You don't have to say much. Rarely can you solve the other's problems, their troubles, but you can give them the most precious gift that you possess, your time and your loving presence. And I've often found in those moments the love of God coming alive in me and in the other person, in that space between us, in sharing our time and our space with one another. It's divine activity. And you know what? Ministers need to be listened to too. I have been accompanied by many people this last year or so, and it's touched me deeply. So many folk have been a good, loving friend to me at times. I've also sought some professional help too, which has now come to an end. I'm really grateful for all the help I've had this last year. This time and space has helped me heal and be ready to move forward in love with the rest of my life. And I was also intently listened to for a couple of hours at the beginning of this year. I was being interviewed for a book on happiness, actually. I was sent the first draft of the chapter written on my experiences from the interviewer and the author the other day. It was fascinating to read what they came up with. You know, he was a great listener. I noticed that during the time we shared together, sharing my heart and being listened to, during that time I reached some deeper truths about myself and this life and the God of my limited understanding that's at the heart of my life. It kind of came to me, it was revealed to me, it came to life, it incarnated in me as I was speaking, as I was being listened to. In that space between us, something more came to life. And it's something the author noticed and commented on the piece that he wrote. And it was the same during my time with the psychologist this last few months. That time being listened to in a skillful way has enabled me to find those sometimes hard to reach places within my own being. It's divine activity, really. And I'm deeply grateful for it. It's enabled me to listen more intensely and intently to others, to be fully present in my own life and the lives of those I share my life with. It's been amazing, really. I love people. I do. I love listening to people, to connect with what they're sharing, what they're struggling with. I love to identify with other people, to connect with people. It makes me feel so alive. Now, of course, it's my job. I am, after all, a minister, but everyone can minister. To minister is to serve, and how do we serve? Well, we serve by giving our hearts to one another, by opening the ears of our hearts, by creating sacred space between one another. This is the kingdom of love. This is divine activity, if ever there was. This is what we're here to do, to create something beautiful, and it begins in that space between one another when we speak the language of the heart and we listen with the ears of our hearts. I'm going to end this devotion with a beautiful bit of wisdom by Nancy Schaffer called Hauling Out Stones. I think it kind of beautifully exemplifies what I've been trying to talk about here in this simple devotion. So this is Hauling Out Stones by Nancy Schaffer. Once he said an odd thing. Forgiving begins with someone sitting near. Later he said, it isn't for the one who did the hurting. It's the other one who needs it. One day without warning, he wept. I sat close. He told an old hurt in half sentences and single words, like stones he was coming upon new, like tree limbs broken, which he needed both arms for hauling aside. A half dozen times that summer we sat, he weeping, hauling out stones, gathering limbs, I near. The stones got smaller, his sentences longer. He said, it's the crying part I couldn't do by myself. And later, he said, I feel cleaned out. In one smile. Still later, he said, I think I've done it. Made a kind of peace, he meant. He slapped his palm hard against mine, laughed, slapped his palm again. Let's create that sacred space between us by listening the ears of our hearts and speaking the language of the heart. And in that space, there is that kingdom of God, that kingdom of love. So let's create that space where love comes to life, Let's encourage the language of the heart. Let's listen with the ears of our hearts, for if we do, the kingdom of love will begin to be built right here, right now. Amen. I'm going to end with some final words of blessing. You know, we need to bless more, and we can all bless. We bless when we give ourselves wholeheartedly to life. May the love that is the heart of life awaken in our very being, and may we carry this love with us, the eternal and universal love of God, and may we do so in all that we feel, in all that we think, in all that we say, and in all that we do. Go in love, go in peace. Amen.